My name is Sierra Cook, and I'm going to give you some tips for what to do as a Christian wife when you discover your husband has been viewing pornography. So I had a daughter who her name was Krista, and she was placed on hospice care after surviving shaken baby syndrome for 3 years. And so I'm going to tell a little bit about that story. So up until that point, my husband and I had known that he had been struggling with pee. I'm going to call it pee. But we didn't really realize that he had a, addiction to it. So my daughter Krista was placed on hospice care. And when that happened, I just happened to ask him, hey, could I see your phone? I'm going to look up some things, as a way to decorate her room on Pinterest. So I was just trying to get some ideas. And my phone was dying or something, so that's why I didn't use my own phone. So it was completely innocent. I wasn't thinking I'm going to go through his phone and find something on him, things like that. So whenever I got his phone, I could tell that the algorithm was showing things that they shouldn't be showing. You can tell that if you search something on a different website, the algorithm on all your, social media platforms will start showing those things. So I caught on to, what was going on. And I realized that he had been viewing pee again after around, a year of not viewing it. So he had relapsed. And so, I felt so betrayed in that moment because my daughter had just been placed on hospice care, and now I was just discovering this about my husband, and that had been viewed the night before. And we don't know really if that was a trigger, because my daughter was actually placed on hospice care the day before all of this was happening. And so he viewed it that evening, and he's okay with me sharing this story. But anyways, so that happened, and, you just feel very betrayed. I was heartbroken. I was just so angry and just very resentful because I was like, how dare you? How could you do this whenever, just on a normal day, but especially right after I found out my daughter was placed on hospice care. So I was just feeling crushed, absolutely crushed, confused. I felt not good enough. And so I realized what he had been doing. And, I realized what we had been doing for that previous year was not working. So he had went about a year without physically viewing pee, but there were still other things that, he was struggling with, Dr. Doug Weiss calls it intrigue addiction, where you're checking people out, different things like that. And so all of that can come from having a addiction to pee. So we didn't know what was going on, all of this inner turmoil that he was actually having, and that pee is not something that you can just quit cold turkey without any other issues ever again, because it's an addiction, a real addiction, and it affects the brain. And so we didn't realize that. So we just thought that he could just stop viewing this, never have any other issues. And we realized in that moment, whatever triggered him to view it again, that whatever we were doing was not working, which wasn't much. We would just pray here and there about it. And we would, we had certain boundaries, as far as of course he wasn't going to watch certain things and stuff like that. But what we were doing was not working. And so I had no idea that it wasn't working. So then I went into, we have to learn what to do. And, it's not very clear out there. You can't just call up a random person and say, hey, what should I do about this? Most people don't want to talk about it or give bad advice. Or if you're like me, some of the people that I called and tried to talk about this was just oh, that's just how men are. And that's the last thing we want to hear in that position is, that's just how men are, get over it. And so now that was almost 3 years ago, and we've experienced so much healing since that time. And so here is what helped me immediately after what, I call Discovery Day. And that's what I've gotten from other people who I've learned things from. And so I believe that these can help you too, because these helped me. And this is going back to like immediately after, if you're someone who has discovered that your husband has this issue or he relapsed, things like that. These are things that you can do immediately. So find a support group. That's going to be important, because you need to feel like you're not alone. You need to feel like you're not crazy. You need people to help validate you, and you need people to walk through this with you. And I do a group call once a week for free, so message me about that if you want to be in that group. And then number 2 would be accountability software. Now, try not to make this video too long, but around that time that my husband had this relapse, also we had decided, well, we don't need this software anymore. We had downloaded accountability software onto his computer, phone, things like that, and we had that on there for that entire year. Well, around that time, we decided we don't need this anymore. He can handle it. And, we relied way too much on our flesh, and my husband's flesh, which we know is sinful. It's by nature sinful. And so when you are a Christian, you know good and well there is an enemy who is trying to attack you, especially in things like this. And so having that accountability software, no matter how many years goes by that he is clean and free from this, there will never be a time that we don't use accountability software for him or for our kids or even for me, because you just never know what the devil is going to attack you with. And there's so much temptation, and it takes 2 seconds to get on the internet and find something. So accountability software is number 2. So number 3 would be understand and repeat over and over that it's not your fault. I know that it can feel, you have a million thoughts running through your head. Why did he do this? What did I do wrong? Am I not attractive? Things like that are going to run through your head like crazy. And the enemy's going to plant a lot in your mind, because you're very vulnerable in that situation. So he's going to also be planting things like you're not good enough, or that you're ugly, and that your body isn't what your husband wants, things like that. All of those are going to be playing in your head. And something that helped me was repeating to myself over, it wasn't my fault. It's not my fault that he did that. There's nothing I did. So, you have to just move forward to that and just believe and trust that it's an addiction. It's not something that you did that caused it. And so number 4 would be pray without ceasing. You're going to have to pray continuously all the time to be able to make it through something like this, because this is real trauma. This isn't just something that you can brush off super easy. That's not how this works. It's trauma. You wouldn't get in a car accident and then turn around and say, oh, I'm just fine. I don't even, I don't need to be seen. I can go right back to work. I don't have to even think anything about it. It's just like nothing happened. You wouldn't treat that kind of trauma that way. So why are you treating a betrayal trauma like that? You're always praying through the trauma and all of those thoughts that are coming to your mind and everything, because it's an attack on not just your mental health, your physical health, spiritual health. And so continue praying over, just constantly, just like the Bible says. So number 5 would be set boundaries with your husband. You are going to have to talk about hard things, and you're going to have to set those boundaries, because he crossed a major boundary in your marriage. And so he should be okay with talking about what boundaries need to be put in place to protect him from this, and to protect you, and to protect your marriage together. And then so number 6, know that it's okay to have triggers. And, it takes time to move forward and learn to cope with those triggers. So for an example, maybe you have a difficult time walking out of your house and seeing another woman, and it just triggers you and reminds you that your husband could potentially be objectifying that woman and seeing her for something other than, God's creation and God's daughter, which is how men should view women. And so, you're going to have to work through a lot of triggers. And so, just know that it takes time to do that. That does not happen overnight. You can't just wake up and just never be triggered by this ever again. It does take time. So, I just want you to know that going through this, you're not alone. There have been others who have made it through. I can tell you that you will get through this, and that regardless of what your husband does, says, you know, if he relapses, if he heals through this, regardless of what he does, you're responsible for you and your own happiness, and you can be happy. It is possible, even though your heart is hurting so bad. I know that it's hurting. You can still be happy, and you can still work on yourself, and you can still move forward. And never forget that God is right there with you. He will provide for your every need. He loves you, and He's going to help you get through this. And this is not something that you'll be able to do on your own. You need God, and you need His strength. So lean into His strength, because it can actually take a weight off of our shoulders, knowing that we don't have to do it alone, that God is the one, and through His abilities, if you believe that God can do anything, you can believe that God will get you through this. So I go more into depth about this on my free webinar, which you can find at sierracook.com/webinar. And I'm also doing a mini course to help you get through this. So message me the word mini course, or you can comment below and I'll send you more info on that too. I just go into depth about all of these things. It's hard to do that on, you know, a quick like 5-minute, 6-minute video. So just know that I'm praying for you. There are people who don't think you're crazy. You know, the culture will tell you that this is completely fine. This is normal. You should be quiet. You know, you should, you know, stop being so jealous. Whatever people have told you, you don't have to feel that way here. I am here to, you know, help you feel validated in this. I'm here to help you know how to move forward in this. So just reach out anytime.